Okay, so I want to give you something that you can work with any place, anytime. And I'm shooting this for some people coming to a training I'm doing in Mexico, but really anybody can make use of this. So the reason I think it's valuable is that basically we're going to get down to studying your basic relationship between the ball, the paddle, and your body. Because every shot that you hit in pickleball uses those three things. And what I find is that it's very interesting to watch how someone does this simple motion. Basically, I can tell the person's ability level after watching that for like 20 seconds. So you probably won't do this, but ideally you just go and do this for like 30 seconds and videotape yourself so you can see these things from the outside. If you're gonna do that, pause the video, go and do that. If you're back or if you haven't done that, here's what we can look at. So one of the first things I see is that people, when they do this, they often they get like this, and they feel like I'm doing this really well. And what I start to feel is how tight this is, how tight this is, how tight my grip is, and also this angle that happens in my wrist. Now this is one of the most common, and I see it then when people go to play. They've got this wrist angle that is breaking the ergonomic flow of the arm, shall we say. And if you were ever to do any boxing or hitting, when you're hitting with the strength of your arm. You don't ever hit like that. You'd actually break your wrist possibly. This is where the body has its force, has its power. And when we play around and break it like this, you can do it with a pickleball paddle and a ball because it's very light and easy, but it shows up in all kinds of bad ways later on, and doing things like this, instead of having a swing, having a stroke with your body where the physics really stays in place. So that's one thing to experiment with. Can you take it from here and get it down? Try it lower. What's too low? To find, okay, where is that really comfortable? And where you can feel like the paddle is doing the work. It's very simple. Another thing that I often see is this. The lower body is kind of statuesque. And then instead of having a consistent bounce where you want the ball, it's moving and you're just compensating. Well, one thing that's really helpful to have in any stroke, and something we go way into, whether it's the serve, return, drive, drop, dink, is an ideal relationship between you and the ball and your paddle. So to me, doing this, that's about here. If I come in here, I lose it. There, I lose it. Now I'm learning, having to adjust to all these different places instead of the one spot I want it. So that means moving a little bit. Your legs are engaged in this process. Okay, next thing is there is a sweet spot of the paddle. All paddle manufacturers talk about it, how big the sweet spot is on the paddle, but there is deadness on your paddle and there is a spot where it really bounces. So down the middle, the fulcrum of the paddle is where it's strongest. And if you were to see, I've watched this on tennis rackets, if you see a ball hit off center, the paddle slightly torques in your hand. And that motion is part of what makes it dead. Also, the distance from the center is where there's less of the center force of it, and the paddle no longer has paddle around it, if that makes sense. So that is a less strong area than this, which has all the strength around it. So learn your paddle. You do this. Move it deliberately around your paddle to where it's dead. You can hear the sound change. It feels like crap in your hand. And do this for whatever, 30 seconds. And so you can see exactly where your sweet spot is. How low it goes, how wide. And when you come back to it, it's like, oh yeah, that just feels great. So one of the things that I encourage you, if you learn how it feels, how it sounds, is that when you're out playing or warming up or practicing, is to get to know when you hit off center. My experience tells me, and having watched this game a lot, that about 80% of our errors are from mishits. And then people blame something else. Oh, I didn't move my feet, or I didn't swing right, or it was too tense. All those things could be relevant. But if you're not hitting the sweet spot, you don't get a true read on the shot. And then what people usually do is when they've mishit, it goes into the net. Now they think they have to tense and swing harder. Then what happens the next time they sweet spot, it's gone, and you don't get a good read. So really know that's what's happening. Then from here, check out the backhand. I recommend, instead of doing this right away, which is fun, but really can I get 3 solid hits, 4 solid hits, and then switch. Really learn, and same on the backhand now, that we're trying to keep this ergonomics instead of doing something. People sometimes do this. Where is it that you feel like it's almost like you're carrying something? You want it close to the strength of your body. And here. And one more thing that you can play with. This is great to do anywhere you are. Oh, you can kind of play with yourself too. Learn to send it over. Go from backhand to forehand. Can you hit sweet spot each time? And one last thing, this is more advanced, is you can learn, so there's a neutral ball. It's a great place to learn how to have spin. So I'm going to swing from a right side to left side here and start to work on underspin. You can see the ball start to spin. Can you keep hitting the sweet spot and getting that ball spinning? If you're on a court or a cement surface, you can let it drop and watch it kick. So that's on the forehand side. I'll stop that, go to backhand side, and now you can work on what's called a slice. And then what's becoming more and more popular are the roll volleys, and you can get to develop that on the forehand side, going the opposite direction with the spin. And one more will go on the forehand or backhand side. That would be the direction of a backhand roll. And then for the really people who want to do some advanced, you can combine them. So I go backspin on that side, top spin on the backhand side, backspin on this side, top spin on this side. Stop that and go the opposite way. Forehand top spin, backhand underspin, forehand top spin. And this just gives you a really good paddle control that then ends itself into all the shots you hit in your game, so that you can make those subtle adjustments, and you've done it. You've kind of played around and know. I feel like I learned a lot of my pickleball skill from growing up with my table tennis paddle, just walk around my house, up and down the stairs, bothering my parents, maybe even watching TV, and just getting that relationship so that there's a fluidity. The wrist does move. I worked with someone yesterday that had a brace on their arm, and I asked them what it was about, and they said, oh, I move my wrist too much, so I'm trying to keep it stable. We took it all off and got her to learn how to, having too much wrist is a problem, but having a locked wrist really robs you of so many subtle variations and movements. So take some time. Each day you can do it while you're waiting for courts. You can do it in your house. I'm doing this out in my yard so that you can see it can happen anywhere. And see if you can just re-examine your relationship to the ball, the simplicity with the paddle. We could talk a lot about grip, but I'm going to save that for another time. I'll give you one thing you can try. Last thing. Let go with these 3 fingers. Just have your thumb and your index finger on the paddle. So you can learn what's there, how much stability do I have just with those fingers. You can then bring them back, go closer so you can see. So you can kind of play around with what is actually necessary to hold this paddle. Maybe it's less than you realize. And from there, that lends itself to more fluidity of your hand and paddle relationship. Okay, enjoy and hope it helps.